Okay? Thank you very much. This is a continuation of the single greatest witch hunt of all time. We have a rogue judge who rules that properties are worth a tiny fraction, 1/100th, a tiny fraction of what they actually are. We have a racist attorney general who's a horror show, who ran on the basis that she was going to get Trump before she even knew anything about me. She used this to run for governor. She failed in her attempt to run for governor. She had virtually no polling. She came back and she said, well, now I'll go back to get Trump again. And this is what we have. It's a scam. It's a sham. Just so you know, my financial statements are phenomenal. They are actually less in terms of the numbers used than the actual net worth. The actual net worth is substantially more. No bank was affected. No bank was hurt. They don't even know why they have to be involved. And they've so testified. They can't believe that they're involved because they were paid back on time. There were no defaults. There were no problems. And it was like a perfect client. In the meantime, people are being murdered all over the sidewalks of New York. There was no victim here. The banks were represented by the best, biggest, most prestigious law firms in the state of New York, actually in the country. Some of the biggest and best law firms, in all cases, the biggest and best law firms. That's who represented them. The banks got back their money. Again, there was never a default. There was never a problem. Everything was perfect. There was no crime. The crime is against me because we have a corrupt district attorney, but we have a corrupt attorney general, and it all comes down from the DOJ. They're totally coordinated this in Washington because I'm the leading candidate. I'm leading Biden by 10 points, and I'm leading the Republicans by 50 and 60 points. That's pretty much, they say, over. I never accept that, but they say it's over. This has to do with election interference, plain and simple. They're trying to damage me so that I don't do as well as I'm doing in the election. Our country's gone to hell. We have a country that's in decline, serious decline. We have a man running our country who has no clue, doesn't know what he's doing, and you know it better than anybody because you have to cover him. What they've done with open borders, what they've done with interest rates and taxes, it's a disgrace. So what we have here is an attempt to hurt me in an election. It's an attempt to hurt me in an election. This never happened before, where President of the United States leaves office and gets indicted. And the reason I got indicted was that I ran. If I didn't run, I'd be sitting right now at a beach like Biden does every time, even though he's supposed to be working. So very simply put, it's a witch hunt. It's a disgrace. We have a corrupt attorney general in this state. You see how she does? This trial was railroaded and fast-tracked. This trial could have been brought years ago, but they waited till I was right in the middle of my campaign. The same with other trials and indictments. It's all run by DOJ, which is corrupt in Washington. Everything goes through them. They're all corrupt people. Frankly, our country is corrupt. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. We're going to straighten it out. They have one property that's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times what this judge put down as a value. Put down a value $18 million, and the property's probably worth, could be anywhere from 50 to 100 times more than that. And a lot of those numbers could even be low. We have other properties, the same thing, so he devalued everything. I didn't even put in my best asset, which is the brand in terms of value. Coca-Cola, take a look at their value. They have a value. The value of their brand is more than everything else put together. My brand is extremely valuable. I didn't even use it in my financials. If I wanted to build up a financial statement, I would have built it up by using brand in addition to everything else. We have the greatest properties. We have among the greatest properties in the world, and I have to go through this for political reasons. This judge is a politician. He comes out of the clubs. He's running unopposed. The reason he's unopposed is because he's getting Trump. They always run opposed. He's getting Trump. The bosses say, don't run against this guy. He's doing great. He's getting Trump. But he overplayed his hand, and he should be investigated for what he's done. What he did in undervaluing these properties is a disgrace to our nation. This shouldn't be a case. One other thing. We have a clause in the contract which tells, essentially, buyer beware. The contract is very, very, if you take a look and you speak to the banks, and you will, I hope you speak to the banks, because the banks got paid in full. I hope you speak to the banks. But we have a clause in the contract. It's like a buyer beware clause. It says when you take a look at the financial statement, don't believe anything you read. This is up front. Don't believe anything you read. Some people call it a worthless clause because it makes the statement and anything you read in the statement worthless. It says go out and do your own research. Go out and do your own due diligence. You have to study the statement carefully. Do not believe anything. In fact, it's so strong that people read it and they don't even accept it. They don't even want it. They don't even use it. It's called a disclaimer clause. It's very common. If you put it in, if you don't have time to do statements, or even if you do have time, people like to have it. This is what's called a full disclaimer. We disclaim the financial statements. But even with a full disclaimer, which immediately takes you out of any fraud situation and any litigation. And by the way, when the Attorney General found out about the disclaimer clause, she said, that's okay, let's go forward anyway. It's good publicity. These are corrupt people we're dealing with, the most corrupt people. We have a great company. I built a great company. It's got tremendous value. It's got some of the greatest real estate assets in the world. And now I have to go before a rogue judge as a continuation of Russia, 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 as a continuation of the greatest witch hunt of all time. And I don't think the people of this country are going to stand for it. If I weren't leading in all the polls, or if I weren't running, I wouldn't have any of these cases. I wouldn't be seeing you this morning. But I'll be seeing a lot of you, because this is a horrible thing that's happening to our country, and we've got to get it straightened away. So we'll go in and see our rogue judge, and we'll listen to this man. And I think most people get it. People are getting it. I can tell you the voters getting it, because every time they give me a fake indictment, I go up in the polls, and that's never happened before. But this is a disgrace, and you ought to go after this Attorney General, because she's turning off everybody from coming in. You know, I don't know if you take a look at the outflow of business. Businesses are fleeing New York because of horrible, horrible attorney generals and judges like we have. They go to other places where they can be treated fairly and with respect. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you. They know we're stopping them. They want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedom. Never let them take it away. They want to silence me because I will never let them silence you. And in the end, they're not after me, they're after you, but I just happen to be standing in their way, and I will always be in their way. This is not a campaign, this is a movement.
There you've got former president yesterday in Iowa. Now you're looking live at Midtown Manhattan. That is Trump Tower. And the former president very shortly will be leaving because at 10 o'clock this morning, Foley Square, Lower Manhattan, his trial is going to start today. Eventually, Donald Trump is expected to take the stand. He faces a lawsuit that accuses him of inflating the value of his assets to get better deals from banks. And the government alleges that he crossed the line into fraud. Actually, the justice who is overseeing this agreed last week and said fraud was committed. And now, essentially, the former president is being stripped of his business licenses if he loses and control over his New York property.
So this is what this means, that his two sons and Donald Trump would not be able to do business here in New York. They would have to sell their properties. The judge ordered the cancellation of the certificates that allow all of them to do business here in New York. And this makes it easier for Letitia James, our Attorney General, to establish damages today in court. And that's why they're going to court this morning.
Go ahead, Brian.
There are no damages. The damages would be to the banks and insurance companies on a regular basis, on a small level. If you're grieving your taxes, you talk about how you don't have a garage or a basement. If you're selling your home, you talk about what a great retail you have and you've got a pool and a beautiful yard. This is what people do on a daily basis. And these are the same businesses that he had when he was hosting The Apprentice and thought about running. But the minute he ran and won, Letitia James and all these politicians feel as though they could make hay and make a name for themselves by taking him on. And now this, to me, is the most egregious example of political targeting. The next one they're going after is Elon Musk. It's already started. But this should alarm every human being.
Well, she ran on it. Before she even got elected, she said that she was going to go after Donald Trump.
What is she trying to do, Lawrence? Is she trying to bankrupt him, ruin his life,
well, I think
not allow him to run for president again?
I don't think it's just this case. I think they're firing on all cylinders because he is the leading presidential candidate. And just to build on Brian's point, that all businesses do it. It's not just like you give your word and then that's the end of the story.
The banks don't do their due diligence.
Exactly. They check this up. So are they liable as well for giving him the loans as well?
We all know. I mean, Steve, you spend a lot of time down in the Palm Beach area. We all do. And they're saying that he's inflated his property. They're saying it's only worth, what, Brian, $18 million?
It's unbelievable.
Y'all, you cannot buy a beachfront piece of land where his house is unless you spend $100 million, maybe even more. Well, it's not worth $18 million. You can barely buy a townhouse for $18 million.
Between 15 and 100 times that.
Here's the thing about that Palm Beach property, and it is beautiful. It's right on the ocean.
It's the best piece of property down there.
It really is. But here's the thing. Long ago, that was zoned as a club. And club values are different than if it were divvied up, turned into private residential plots. There was an item I read over the weekend that said that in 2020, Donald Trump, with the tax people of Palm Beach County, agreed that the value of Mar-a-Lago is $28 million. And so that is what, you know, if it were selling on the real estate market, lower taxes. The taxes are very high.
That's so common. What you do is you grieve your taxes, and then if you're looking to refinance a property.
I'm just saying what.
But this is targeted.
So many people do grieve their taxes.
Well, and regarding New York, and the judge cited this last week. He said, you know, Donald Trump is a real estate developer. He should know how big his apartment is in Trump Tower, right? Donald Trump said it was 30,000 square feet. It's actually just 11,000 square feet.
How,
and
forget about the carjacking. Let's Donald Trump inflated the size of his apartment. Well, my goodness, put him in jail.
It's the trial. So anyway, the judge wrote a discrepancy of this order of magnitude by a real estate developer sizing up his own living space of decades can only be considered fraud. Yeah. And that is one of the reasons why this justice, who he's going to sit in front of for the next month or two, said essentially, you've already committed
I love
fraud.
what he said.
This should alarm everybody.
No, it's your turn, Lawrence.
All right.
No, it's fine.
But hold on, can I say one thing? I love what he said, though, in the microphone yesterday. He was in Iowa, and he said, I consider it an honor because I'm being indicted for you.
Right. He also he accused the judge and the attorney general, both Democrats, of a political crusade. He called the judge deranged and the attorney general a racist.
I think the American people can see clearly what's happening right now.
All right, let's see if we can.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. Welcome back to Wake Up America. You are looking live at Trump Tower in New York City and the New York Court House in Lower Manhattan. The civil suit brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James against the Trump Organization begins today, with the former president expected to be in attendance.
Yeah, so for more on that and the entire Trump legal situation, let's bring in former New Jersey Superior Court judge and the host of the Judging Freedom podcast, Andrew Napolitano. Thank you so much for being here, Judge. Trump, he will personally appear in New York State Supreme Court today in front of the judge who on Friday ruled that Trump committed fraud hundreds of times in the past 10 years and who stopped Trump of most of his New York real estate licenses. What's your reaction to this? I know the former president said on social that he will be there. What do you think that this is a good move for the former president to be there?
Well, John and Allison, good morning. It's a bit of a mystery as to why he wants to be there, other than perhaps because he is Donald Trump, and he may want to just look into the eyes of the judge in this case. This is a non-jury trial, so everything, the facts as well as the law, will be decided by one person, this judge. He's already ruled as a matter of law that Trump and the Trump Organization, Trump personally and his umbrella company, engaged in such a massive series of regular, consistent, and systematic frauds that he's not entitled to have his licenses to own, operate, manage, buy, and sell real estate. Trump's response is, wait a minute, nobody lost a nickel, nobody complained. The banks that you say I cheated got paid back in full. They made money, I made money, everybody's happy. But New York has a statute that permits the attorney general of the state to sue people who have defrauded banks, even if the banks didn't lose any money. And that's what Letitia James has done. Now, why is he there today? He's not a witness in the case. He may be a witness in the case when it's time for his case to come on, but that won't happen for another 3 or 4 weeks. He probably just wants to make it known to the public and to the court. He's concerned about the outcome, and he wants to watch the trial.
So, Judge, what will happen? So he'll be there. Will his attorneys speak for him, and then they move on? How do you see this playing out today?
Okay, great question. Today is opening arguments. So the government's lawyers will address the court for about 2 or 3 hours and summarize their evidence. Then Trump's lawyers will do the same. That will probably take most of the day. When that's over, whether it's sometime today or whether it's not until tomorrow morning, the government will begin presenting witnesses, and its witnesses will consist of outside experts that it has hired to examine the books and records of the Trump Organization and former employees of the Trump Organization, including Alan Weisselberg, who was the chief financial officer and who pleaded guilty to some of this stuff and in return agreed to testify against his former employers.
As you mentioned, this is a non-jury trial, so meaning the justice will rule on the case itself. But can Trump get a fair shake in this trial? And will this appeal process take some time?
You know, we have a system in New York, John, of which I've been harshly critical, and that is where the prosecutors and the judges run for office. And so they identify Republican or Democrat. In this case, the attorney general ran for office as a Democrat saying, I'm going to get Trump. In this case, the judge ran for office, not mentioning Trump, but as a Democrat. The better system, of course, is where judges and prosecutors are apolitical and are appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate. That's not what we have here. Can he get a fair trial? According to him, he cannot. That the deck is stacked against him, and that's why we have appeals. But it's going to be a very expensive trial and a very expensive appeal.
All right, we will be following it. We appreciate your expertise, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Thank you so much, sir.
Pleasure, guys.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring in Sean Hannity to react to all of this. Sean, what's your reaction to what they're doing to Donald Trump here in New York?
This is the most outrageous case I think I've ever seen in my life. It is irrelevant whatever valuations the Trump organization put on their properties. And by the way, they were definitely more within lines than what the judge determined. That would be irrelevant. Any lending institution, any insurance company, they have a fiduciary responsibility to determine the valuation themselves, bring in their own appraisers. As a matter of fact, every one of those contracts, when they put valuations down, that is stipulated in the contract. This really goes to the heart of the larger argument that we're having in the country. Do we have justice in America that has been weaponized and politicized? In this particular case, you got an attorney general. Her whole platform, she ran to go after one man, Donald Trump, one family, the Trump family, one organization, the Trump organization. Okay, so the judge now, they want to take away all control of their property, ostensibly cancel this family in New York, fine them $250 million. And the most absurd part of the evaluation the judge is looking at is the property down in Florida, Mar-a-Lago. The judge is saying it's valued between $18 and $26 million. I study these properties down in Mar-a-Lago. Ken Griffith bought 5 homes in a row, a couple of years ago, for $100 million each. There's not a single property that is under $400 million that has both the Intercoastal and the Ocean Way as Mar-a-Lago. And the judge is as guilty as is more guilty than Trump at having a phony valuation of that property. It is really sad what's happening here. For that, you see a deck stacked against him. You see literally, they're going after the one family fulfilling a campaign promise. It is a great travesty, a great injustice. And this really can't keep happening. This is the stuff of a banana republic. You ask any appraiser in Palm Beach, Florida, to put a value on Mar-a-Lago, and they all should come out with their valuations, and there's not going to be one under $400 million, and that's going to be on the low side. And for the judge to say, well, that was overvalued, and he had valued it at $18 million is obscene.
Well, the thing is, what is his experience? Number one. Number two, it's just one guy. They've already made their conclusions, and now they start the trial. The other thing is, Mar-a-Lago makes $18 million, annually, let alone it's worth about $300 million, as you said, and you know all about real estate. But this is unbelievable because there is no plaintiff. There's no insurance company. There's no construction company. There is no bank that said, we got to get Donald Trump. The same deal that he's done when he was hosting The Apprentice, these deals were all in place. Where was the outrage then? Zero outrage because they're making things up.
Well, Brian, you raise a really relevant point here. The banks were paid. The insurance company was paid. Nobody's complaining that they lost money on any of the deals based on the valuations that the company put forward here. But in the end, I want to go back to this point. When you put in for a loan with a banking institution or you want to get an insurance policy, it is in the contract. It was in Donald Trump's contract. It was in the Trump organization's contract that these are our valuations. But for the sake of your valuation, you must do your own due diligence. You must come up with your own valuation of the property. And at that point, the responsibility is on them. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders, to whoever they're working for, to get that number right.
Hey, Sean, I got one more element.
Not on the, that burden is not on the
when they
person applying.
When they do your taxes, you have accountants do your taxes. I don't care how smart you are. Accountants do your taxes. Last year, they harassed his accountants to the point where they gave up ownership of the taxes they did. So just like flipping his lawyer in the Georgia case, now they're blowing up his accountants. They're isolating him, cutting off his arteries of relief, and then saying, now we're going to put you on trial. How is that okay?
It's not okay. This is why the House Judiciary Committee rightly, and every American better pay attention to this, because if they can go after one man, which is Letitia James ran on a platform to go after one person, Donald Trump, one family, the Trump family, one organization, the Trump organization. This is the fulfillment of a campaign promise. This is one of the worst cases I've ever seen. And at the end of the day, if they are successful here, and I've got to imagine that President Trump would have a much better chance in terms of justice on appeal, but imagine it is ostensibly canceling their business in New York, finding them a obscene amount of money, $250 million, taking control of their property. What country does that sound like to you? It doesn't look like anything American to me. It would be a horrible precedent.
Sean, there's another topic that we wanted to get your thoughts on. It's what's happening on the House. It looks like the Republicans, that they're at each other's throat again. They didn't get the 12 appropriations bills out, but they were able to keep the government open. Gates wants McCarthy gone. You have been following this. You know the members that are there. What is your read on this fight going on?
First of all, I wish it wasn't going on. Let me put it that way. If you take Lawrence, LJ, you take the personalities out of it. What's frustrating to me watching this, talking to varying people involved in this, okay, there is an argument to be made. Kevin McCarthy should have gotten the 12 appropriations bills done faster. They have 4 of them done. But in the short term, there was a coalition put together by Congressman Chip Roy and Congressman Byron Donalds and other members of the Freedom Caucus, and they were able to get together with more moderate members of the coalition, and they came up with a deal. They would have had an 8% cut in spending across the way. Right. They would have secured the border, which every conservative wants done in the country, and it would have bought them the time to finish the appropriation bill process. And then if they all stood together, all 222, and they would then pass these bills, then the pressure point would move from the House to the Senate when they move to conference. I'd rather see the pressure on Mitch McConnell, Republicans in the Senate, and Chuck Schumer in the Senate than on House Republicans. I want them to be the party of secure borders, and I want them to be the party of fiscal responsibility. And I think strategically, they have time to do this now. They can do it through the appropriations process, get those bills passed, and if that happens, I think successfully, we can get our border secure, we can get more fiscal responsibility, and that would be good for the country.
And real quick, what do you make of Jamal Bowman pulling the fire alarm to open the door? Have you ever been at a door, Sean Hannity, and you thought, how do I open it? I'm going to pull the fire alarm.
Yeah, I have just a brilliant idea. What a great idea. I'm going to pull the fire alarm. I have a vague memory, I'm not sure if it's reality or not, of me and my friends, young, in kindergarten and first grade, maybe occasionally pulling a fire alarm by accident. It was a complete accident. This guy has entered that building 100 times. He was already indoors, and his excuse is as flimsy as any as I've ever heard. A part of me finds it amusing, but it wasn't too amusing to his colleagues. No. Apparently, some of them want the same charges because it was during the middle of a congressional hearing. that were brought to January 6 people brought on him. We'll see what happens.
Well, thank you very much for the confession that you did just the same thing he did. But
I'm not saying I did. I'm saying I was around people that might have done that.
Sean, don't worry. The statute of limitations has run out. You're okay. You're in the clear.
It's a foggy memory. You know, I've never been shy about admitting I was a fairly incorrigible child. So, and many would argue I'm an incorrigible adult. Incorrigible.
Incorrigible.
All right.
That's what his mama used to say about him.
He watched the incorrigible King of Cable. Let's see, 12 hours and 15 minutes from right now. Right here
don't
on the
miss it. We
channel.
got a great show tonight.
All right. We'll be watching.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, guys.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.